We're going to start off the workout with a dynamic warm-up, and the object is just to get warmed up by getting a little blood flow, get the body temperature up, which already isn't a very big problem because it's 110 outside. We're going to start off with just a dynamic warm-up, then we start off the exercises with lighter weights than we're actually going to use for the work set. So you go from a kind of a general warm-up to a more specific one. Today, Branch is going to begin with the incline band-resisted dumbbell press. Next, weighted dips with a forward lean, followed by bench press with chains. Then negative eccentric emphasis on the Smith machine, followed by flies with dumbbells against band resistance. Then cable pullover supersetted with a seated pec deck. And finally the band resisted Warriors Valley 10 push-up routine. What we're doing today is incline presses against a band. What the band does, generally people are going to be stronger towards the top half of a movement. So for instance, like you've seen, I'm sure everybody's seen a lot of people at gyms work out on a bench press or incline press using partial range of motion at the top with way more weight than they can actually lift. This is because generally a bench press or any kind of pressing move or incline press is going to be an ascending strength curve, meaning as your leverage improves towards the top, you get stronger. What the band does is counteract that. As your leverage improves and you push the bar away from your body, the band's tension is going to increase. So basically, when you're pushing a weight towards the top, if you do so explosively, you're going to be able to essentially go in cruise control and just kind of coast your way through. So you're not really working very hard the last half of the rep. What the bands do is force you to work overtime. So you're kind of getting an overload throughout the full range of motion. So you're getting the benefits of a partial range of motion movement because there's more weight being used and it's more difficult in that range of motion, but you're also getting that full range of motion, that benefit. So again, we're after economy of exercise, and this is adding bands is very economical. Most people don't do it with dumbbells, but the way Branch has it here is the band just goes under the bench and it just stays in place, and it works very efficiently. And when Branch first came to me, one of the things he talked about is he hadn't been locking out reps, so he felt he wasn't getting any of the tricep benefits of pressing movements, but mainly at the top when you squeeze and you really feel your chest working on that last squeeze, he wasn't getting that. So what the bands do is kind of amplify what he was after. Branch is up to 100 pounds here against bands, getting a good full range of motion. As he locks the weight out, watch his chest work. So a lot of people feel you're only getting the chest movement at the bottom of the movement, so there's no reason to lock the weight out. But you watch him lock the weight out and make that judgment call for yourself. Here, Branch is up to 125 pounds against bands. That's an impressive weight to use with just straight weight, let alone with increasing band resistance. These bands add approximately 77 pounds at the top of the movement. That was 125 in each hand, plus an additional 40 pounds of band resistance each side. 125 pounds alone is more weight than most mortals can handle. When dips are done the way Branch is doing it, watch how he leans forward and puts his chin to his chest. They're one of the best overall one of the best overall tools to develop your chest. Here, Branch is doing dips, again, using the technique to optimally develop his chest with 120 pounds over his body weight for multiple reps. The weight increases, and Branch keeps that perfect bodybuilder style form for optimal pec development. If you watch Branch getting that good full range of motion, that stretch at the bottom, on this, what you want to watch for is you want to get to about parallel, where your shoulders and your elbows are parallel, or slightly below, but you don't want to go way below because then you put undue strain on your pec and your shoulders, and you're not getting any further development except putting yourself at an increased risk of injury. But if you don't get that bottom stretch and you make this into a partial movement, you're not getting that full pec development. Here, Branch is up to 200 pounds over his body weight. Again, keeping that good bodybuilder pec development technique. The same concept that we talked about earlier on the incline press with the bands applies to the chains. As you push the weight up and it gets closer to lockout, Each chain link comes off the floor and increases resistance, making it overload throughout the entire range of motion versus just a partial range of motion. And what you need to be careful of on this, if you don't use accommodated resistance, meaning bands or chains on deloads, unless if it's on a pressing movement, for the simple fact that you are overloading yourself throughout the entire movement. This can potentially put more stress on your central nervous system, your muscles, your joints. So this can't be done all the time. And the advantage to chains versus bands is bands require more control, because on the negative or eccentric portion of the rep, you're forced to really, slow the weight down because of the overspeed effect, meaning it wants to just crash towards the ground, because they work like think about a rubber band. Once you let go, after you snap it, it's going to want to come right back to the starting point. That's the way regular bands go. So if you're not ready for them, they're an advanced training tool. Chains, on the other hand, feel a lot more like straight weight. And here we're going bench press with chains, adding 100 pounds of chains on each side. And since we're after development of the muscle, not an increased bench press, we're not putting bench press first in the workout. So Branch is already very fatigued at this point, but he's still going to push some good weight up. If you watch this, it's a very intense training technique. We're doing forced reps with the addition of chains. If you have any doubts on why you need a deload, watch this. This is an extremely two very intense training techniques into one. That's why deload's needed. These are eccentric overload or negative overload bench presses done on the Smith machine. The reason these are done is people can handle up to 160% of their regular max on a negative in a lift. So as we know, the negative portion of the lift is very important for achieving maximal muscular development. So the key here is, to optimize that, there's not really a whole lot of tools you can use. We have like weight releasers for powerlifting and things like that, but that's so hard to put on after each rep. You have to put each rep back. What we can do here is on a Smith machine, so we won't have to balance it at the top. As you can see, as he lowers the weight, we put an additional 50 pounds on, then we take it off at the bottom, and he pushes the weight back, the 50-pound lighter weight back up to the top. So we're getting that overload in the eccentric first off by drawing it out, doing a 5 count on the way down, and adding an additional 50 pounds more than he'll do on the positive portion when he pushes the weight back up. A lot of people are under the preconceived notion that bands can only be used in squatting movements, deadlift movements, and pressing movements. That's false. Here we're using them for flies. The advantage doing it here is when you get all the way out at the bottom of the fly, the band's doing the least amount of resistance. So when your shoulder and pec are in the most vulnerable position, you're getting the least amount of resistance. That's what you want. But as your leverage improves and you squeeze the weight together, remember the key here on a fly is you do not want to extend your arms. You want to squeeze the weight together like a giant bear hug, putting all the pressure directly on your pecs and not getting the triceps engaged. The idea here is as you squeeze the weight together, the band resistance increases, and as the weight touches, you want to hold it together there for about a half second. And the idea is you're hitting your weakest spot with the least amount of resistance. Your strongest spot has the most amount of resistance. So you're getting a good stretch. And at the top, think about a normal dumbbell fly. Once you get out of the bottom position, that's very difficult until halfway up. The last half of the movement is almost like you can coast the whole way through because you've already got past the most difficult portion of the movement. Here, As your leverage improves, your resistance increases, making this an extremely difficult overload. This is only to be done by the very advanced lifter because of the overspeed, overstretch effect at the bottom of the movement. If you're not able to control the weight, this is a recipe for disaster. So be very careful with implementing this lift, and you have a very solid base if you're going to give it a try. As we like to say, anything totally safe is totally useless. Even as the difficulty of this exercise increases, you watch Branch. He never extends his arms, keeping the constant tensions on the pecs. One of these single joint movements like flies, you like to call it muscle intention. You want to actively recruit the muscle you're using. When you're going for a maximum bench press, you're just trying to get the weight from point A to point B explosively using good technique. When you're doing a fly or one of those type of movements, you need to actively recruit the pecs and purposely feel them while you're doing the movement. Because if you say, for instance, your front delts are much stronger than your pecs, you're gonna have a tendency to want to use them to get the weight together to do the fly. That's totally defeating the purpose. Or even if your triceps are much stronger than your pecs, you may try to press the weight up, and again, totally defeat the purpose. So with these single joint movements like fly, you want to really focus on muscle intention. Actively recruit the muscles and feel them as you perform the movement. This is an incline pull over, and the reason we're not using a barbell or a dumbbell here is because we want sort of constant tension on the muscle, just how we've talked about with flies and things like that with a band, how it does constant tension throughout the movement. This movement would be unsafe to do because of the vulnerable position your shoulders are in, getting that maximum stretch on the way back, doing it with a barbell or a dumbbell against a band. So we're here, the next best option is on a cable weight stack. That not only develops the chest, but develops the intercostals and will make you have the illusion of having a much bigger chest. Back in the old days, many of the old timers did pullover movements, and they believe it actually expanded your rib cage. Well, that's not it. It doesn't actually do that. It gives the illusion of doing so, which builds a much more powerful muscular chest. Branch is performing cable flies here, and again, if you see me getting onto him here, he started off by not holding the movement. At the top of the movement, he wants to hold it together to get that peak contraction. We're supersetting with the pullovers. The idea on the pullover is that first rep you watch, you didn't get back far enough, but each rep is getting back a little further, and that's the idea. Is you don't want to use a ton of weight. You want to get a good stretch and do these for high repetitions. There's going to be no value for doing this 3, 4, 5 reps with short range of motion. You want to get a good full range of motion, good stretch, performing for high repetitions to develop the chest and the intercostals. You even get some lat development out of this movement. What we're doing here is at the end of the workout, Branch is going 45-pound dumbbells. He's going to press them for 2 minutes straight. That may not sound like a lot on the surface, but that's an eternity. Every time, what he's going to do is hold the weight at the top position, really feeling it in his chest, purposely flexing his chest. Every time I yell go, he does 3 repetitions. Then he waits at the top of the movement until I yell go again and does 3 more. When you do this exercise, you want to do it generally from 1 to 2 minutes, and you want it, so we're on the upper end today, and you also want to make sure you're at the end. If you say you go to failure where you can no longer hold the weight at the top, you want to continue to go at the bottom. So even if you're resting that weight on your chest, you want to put in whoever's yelling go, if they yell go and you can't press it more than a ½ inch, keep going a ½ inch. You want to keep constant tension on the muscles. This is not like, say, a fly where you're trying to concentrate on, perfect form. Obviously you want perfect form, but if it gets difficulty, the point is to go beyond failure. Don't stop, because the weight's going to be really light. Here's Branch. You saw him earlier in this workout do 125-pound dumbbell incline presses against resistance band, nearly do 200 pounds of his body with bar dips. So that's not a lot of weight for him. And at the end, you can see even when it gets difficult, he's moving that weight a ½ inch. And what that does is we want to work every component of the muscle cell. You have fast twitch fibers, you have slow twitch fibers, you have intermediate fibers. Obviously, your fast twitch fibers have the most potential for growth. No one denies that. But you can get growth in the slower twitch muscle fibers. Fred Hatfield, a pioneer ahead of his time, talked about that in a scientific approach to bodybuilding way back in 1982 about a holistic approach, making every component of the muscle fiber grow, and that still holds true 30 years later. This is what we talked about a couple workouts ago. Was at the end of the workout, we did what we call the Juarez Valley push-up routine, meaning we're going from top to bottom. So this is a Juarez Valley 10. So you start off at 10 repetitions. This is evolved out of the Mexican prison system. And what it does is you start off with 10 repetitions, you walk across your cell, then you do 1 repetition on the other side. Fortunately, we're not in a cell, we're outdoors in 110 degree heat, and he's going from 10 to 1, 9 to 2, 8 to 3, 7 to 4, 6 to 5. And what it does is you cover every number between the top number and 1. So before we've done this with 20 to 1, but the difference is today we're doing the push-ups against the resistance band. And at this point, we're trying to really fatigue the muscle fiber and really make this difficult, so we're not trying to, I'm not as worried about getting full range of motion, perfect form. This is kind of a finisher, all out fatigue before he goes home.